I want to tell you something I've never told anyone outside my attorney's office. It's about the day I realized my own daughter didn't see me as a person anymore, just a wallet with a pulse. And before we go any further, I need you to do something for me. Comment below and tell me where you're watching this from. Because what I'm about to share isn't just my story. It's a warning. And if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, you're going to want to hear every word. Also, check the description box below. There are more stories like mine there, stories that might help you see your own life more clearly. It started on a Tuesday afternoon in April. Spring in Connecticut is supposed to feel like renewal, like hope. But that day, standing in my daughter Rebecca's pristine kitchen with juice dripping down my silk blouse, I felt something die inside me. Something I didn't even know was still alive. My granddaughter Lily, 7 years old, blonde curls, the kind of child strangers coo over in grocery stores, had just thrown her cranberry juice directly at my chest. Not accidentally. Not in a tantrum. She looked me dead in the eyes and hurled that plastic cup with the kind of aim that comes from intention. The cold liquid soaked through to my skin immediately. I stood there, frozen, waiting for Rebecca to say something. Anything. Instead, my daughter glanced up from her phone, barely registering what had happened, and said, "She's expressing herself, Mom. It's healthy." I felt my throat tighten. This wasn't the first incident. It wasn't even the 10th. But something about the casualness of Rebecca's dismissal, the way she said it like I was overreacting to a child's creativity rather than blatant disrespect, made my chest ache in a way I hadn't felt since my husband died 6 years ago. Lily was already back at the table, swinging her legs, humming. No apology. No acknowledgement. 7 years old and already learning that grandma doesn't matter. My son-in-law, Todd, walked in then, holding his golf clubs. He took one look at me, soaked, stunned, shrinking, and actually smirked. That's the word for it. Not a smile. A smirk. Like I was the punchline. "You're too sensitive for a little mess, Eleanor," he said, voice dripping with condescension. "Kids will be kids." I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. What could I say? That this was the same man who'd asked me for a $50,000 loan last year to expand his business? That Rebecca had convinced me it was an investment in their future, in Lily's future, and I'd signed the check because I wanted to be useful? That I'd been coming over twice a week to help with Lily, doing their laundry, cooking dinners they barely touched, all while being treated like an inconvenient houseplant? I didn't say any of that. Instead, I walked to the sink, grabbed a dish towel, and quietly cleaned the juice off the floor. My hands were shaking. Rebecca went back to scrolling. Todd left for his golf game. Lily asked for more juice. When I got home that evening, I sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes. The house felt too quiet. It always did. But that day, the silence felt different. It felt like clarity. I'd spent the last 6 years trying to be the kind of grandmother, the kind of mother, that my family needed. I'd rearranged my life around their schedules. I'd written checks when they asked. I'd bitten my tongue so many times I'd forgotten what my real voice sounded like. And for what? To be a convenient ATM who cleaned up juice and took insults with a smile? I thought about my late husband, Richard. He would have been furious. Richard had worked his whole life, 43 years as a civil engineer, so we could build something. So I could be secure. He'd made me promise, the week before he passed, that I wouldn't let people take advantage of me. "You're too kind, Ellie," he'd said, his voice already weak. "Don't let them mistake that for weakness." I'd failed him. But maybe it wasn't too late to fix it. I went inside, poured myself a glass of wine, and called my attorney, Gregory Whitman. Greg had handled Richard's estate and had been gently suggesting for years that I update my will. I'd been putting it off, telling myself there was time, that Rebecca was my only child and of course everything would go to her. That's what mothers do, right? We give everything. Even when it costs us our dignity. Greg answered on the 3rd ring. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I need to revise my will," I said. "And I need to do it this week." There was a pause. Then carefully he asked, "Eleanor, is everything all right?" I almost laughed. Was everything all right? "No, Greg. Everything was so far from all right that I couldn't even see all right from where I was standing. Let's just say I've had a revelation, I told him. Can you fit me in? We scheduled an appointment for Thursday morning. 2 days away. I spent those 2 days moving through my house like a ghost, replaying every moment from the last 6 years. Every dismissive comment. Every time Rebecca had forgotten to invite me to Lily's school events until the last minute. Every time Todd had made some snide remark about my outdated opinions or my sensitivity. Every time I'd swallowed my hurt and pretended it didn't matter. I pulled out old photo albums. Pictures of Rebecca as a child, sweet, thoughtful, always drawing me cards and leaving them on my pillow. When had that girl disappeared? When had my daughter become someone who could watch her own child disrespect me and shrug it off as expression? I thought about what Richard and I had built. The investments, the life insurance, the property we'd bought and paid off. The retirement accounts we'd carefully maintained. The small inheritance Richard had received from his parents that we'd grown into something substantial. We'd done it all with the assumption that our daughter would value it. That she'd understand the sacrifice. If you've ever been betrayed by the people you die for, you know exactly how I felt in those 2 days. Like the ground beneath you isn't solid anymore. Like you've been speaking a language no one else understands. Thursday morning came. I wore my best suit, the navy one Richard always said made me look like I could run a Fortune 500 company. I needed to feel strong. Greg's office smelled like leather and old books, the kind of smell that makes you feel like serious things happen here. We sat down. Greg had his legal pad ready. He asked me what changes I wanted to make. I took a breath. Then I told him everything. The juice incident was just the final straw, but I walked him through years of small cruelties, dismissals and disrespect. I told him about the loan that had never been repaid, never even acknowledged. I told him about feeling like a servant in my daughter's home, about being mocked for my feelings, about watching my granddaughter learn that grandma was someone you could treat like garbage. Greg listened. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he set down his pen and looked at me with something like sadness in his eyes. Eleanor, he said gently, you don't have to do this in anger. We can wait. You can think about it. But I shook my head. I'd done nothing but think for 6 years. I'm not doing this in anger, Greg, I said. I'm doing this in clarity. There's a difference. And there was. Because this wasn't about punishment. It was about finally, standing up for myself. It was about recognizing that love shouldn't cost you your self-respect. That being a mother doesn't mean being a doormat. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything. I set up a trust for Lily's education. That money would be protected, managed by Greg's firm, and only used for tuition, books, and legitimate educational expenses. Rebecca and Todd wouldn't be able to touch it. Beyond that, I redirected the bulk of my estate to causes that actually mattered to me: the local women's shelter where I'd started volunteering after Richard died, the animal rescue where I'd adopted my cat, and a scholarship fund in Richard's name at the community college. Rebecca would still inherit something: the house, some personal items, a small cash amount, but the days of her assuming she'd coast on my money were over. And I made sure every word of that will was ironclad. Greg assured me that no court would overturn it. I was of sound mind, acting of my own free will, and I had every right to distribute my assets as I saw fit. When we finished, Greg printed out the documents. I signed each page slowly, deliberately. With every signature, I felt lighter. Like I was shedding skin I'd been carrying for too long. I'll have my assistant send a notification letter next week, Greg said. Standard practice when a will is updated. It doesn't reveal the details, just confirms that changes have been made and that all interested parties should be aware. I nodded. I knew what that meant. Rebecca would get a letter from an attorney's office. She'd panic. She'd call. And for the first time in 6 years, I'd have the power. I drove home feeling something I hadn't felt in years: free. The letter arrived at Rebecca's house the following Tuesday. I know because she called me exactly 8 minutes after the mail carrier's usual delivery time. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter where I was having tea and watching my cat, Winston, chase a dust mote through a sunbeam. I looked at Rebecca's name on the screen and let it ring 3 times before I answered. Mom. Her voice was tight. Not worried yet. Just alert. Like a predator that sensed something off in the wind. Did you get a letter from Whitman and Associates? I took a sip of my tea. Earl Grey. I'd made it in Richard's favorite mug. I'm sure I don't know what you mean, sweetheart. How are you? How's Lily? Mom. Sharper now. I'm serious. There's a letter here from your attorney. It says there have been changes to your estate documents and that as a beneficiary I'm being notified of modifications. What's going on? I could hear Todd in the background saying something I couldn't quite make out. Probably telling her to put me on speaker. Making it a team effort. That's how they operated, united front, tag team manipulation. Oh that, I said lightly, as if we were discussing a grocery list. Yes, I updated my will last week. Just some housekeeping. You know how these things are. Silence. Then, what kind of housekeeping? Nothing for you to worry about, dear. Just making sure everything reflects my current wishes. Very standard. Mom, what did you change? Rebecca's voice had shifted into something I recognized from her teenage years. The tone she used when she'd been caught in a lie and was frantically trying to figure out how much I knew. We can talk about it sometime, I said. I'm actually in the middle of something right now. Was there anything else? Another pause. I could practically hear her brain working, recalculating. Can you come over? Tonight? We should talk about this. I'm afraid I'm not available tonight. I have plans. This was true. I was meeting my friend Patricia for dinner at the Italian place downtown. We'd been talking about it for weeks. But even if I'd had nothing scheduled, even if I'd been planning to sit home and watch game shows all evening, I would have said the same thing. Because for the first time in 6 years, my time was mine. I didn't owe Rebecca my availability on demand. Mom. Todd's voice now, distant but clear. He'd taken the phone from her. Eleanor, this is serious. You can't just change your will without discussing it with us. We're your family. Something hot and sharp flared in my chest. Actually, Todd, I can. And I did. It's my will. My estate. My decision. But I really do have to go now. Tell Lily I said hello. I hung up before he could respond. My hands weren't shaking this time. The calls kept coming. 3 more that day. I didn't answer. I was rediscovering something I'd forgotten. I didn't have to be available just because someone wanted me to be. I didn't have to explain myself. I didn't have to justify my choices to people who'd spent years making me justify my feelings. That evening, over pasta and wine with Patricia, I told her everything. Patricia had been my friend since Richard and I moved to the neighborhood 32 years ago. She'd watched Rebecca grow up. She'd been at Richard's funeral, holding my hand when I couldn't stand up anymore. She knew my life. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. It's about damn time, she said. I laughed. Actually laughed. It felt strange in my chest, like a muscle I'd forgotten how to use. I keep waiting to feel guilty, I admitted. But I don't. Is that wrong? Patricia shook her head. Ellie, guilt is what we feel when we've done something wrong. You haven't done anything wrong. You've done something right. Finally. She was right. I'd spent 6 years feeling guilty for having needs, for wanting respect, for expecting my family to treat me like a person. I was done with that guilt. The next few days were quiet. Suspiciously quiet. Rebecca texted once, * we need to talk. This is important. * I responded, * I'm available for coffee next Friday at 2 p.m. Let me know if that works. * she didn't respond. I knew what they were doing. They were trying to figure out how bad the damage was. Todd was probably already looking up estate laws, trying to figure out if they could contest whatever I'd done. Rebecca was probably cycling through denial, anger, and panic. Part of me, a small, petty part one wasn't entirely proud of, enjoyed imagining it. Friday came. I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, ordered my drink, and sat by the window. Rebecca showed up exactly on time, which told me how seriously she was taking this. She was wearing yoga pants and an expensive jacket, the one I'd bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. She sat down without ordering anything. Her face was pinched, tight around the eyes. "Hi, Mom." "Hello, sweetheart. You look tired. Are you sleeping all right?" "Let's just cut to it," she said. "What did you do?" I took a sip of my latte. I revised my estate plan to reflect my values and priorities. "That's all." "That's not all. The letter said you made substantial modifications." "What does that mean?" "It means exactly what it says." Rebecca leaned forward. "Mom, I'm your daughter. I deserve to know what's in your will." I met her eyes. "Actually, you don't. Not until I'm gone. But since we're here, I'll tell you this, you'll inherit the house and some personal items. There's also a trust set up for Lily's education that's quite generous." She blinked. And that's what concerns you?" Her face went pale, then red. "What about everything else? The investments? Dad's life insurance? The property in Vermont?" "Redistributed." "To who?" "To causes I care about." If you've ever watched someone's face when they realize they've lost something they thought was guaranteed, you know what I saw in that moment. It wasn't grief. It wasn't even hurt. It was fury. Pure, unfiltered rage at being denied something she'd considered hers. "You can't do this," she said, voice shaking. "That's my inheritance. Dad would have wanted me to have it." The mention of Richard almost broke me. Almost. But I thought about what he'd said. "Don't let them mistake kindness for weakness." "Your father would have wanted you to treat me with respect," I said quietly. "He would have wanted you to raise Lily to do the same. He would have wanted you to remember that I'm a person, not an ATM." "This is about the juice?" Rebecca's voice pitched higher. "Mom, she's 7. Kids do things. You're going to disinherit me because a child had a tantrum." "It wasn't a tantrum," I said. "It was deliberate. And you didn't care. That's the part you're missing, Rebecca. You didn't care. You haven't cared for a long time." "That's not fair. Let me ask you something." I kept my voice level. "When's the last time you called me just to talk? Not to ask for money. Not to ask me to babysit. Just to see how I was doing." She opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. We talk all the time." "We don't. You tell me what you need from me. That's not the same thing." "So this is punishment? You're punishing me for not being the perfect daughter?" I shook my head. "I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference." Rebecca stood up abruptly. Her chair scraped against the floor. People turned to look. "This isn't over," she said. "I'm going to contest this. I'll fight you." "That's your choice," I said. "But you should know that Greg made sure everything is legally sound. You'll lose. And it'll cost you money. You don't have to fight a battle you can't win." She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. Maybe she was. Maybe I'd been a stranger to myself for so long that I'd forgotten who I actually was. She left without another word. I sat there, watching her BMW pull out of the parking lot too fast, and felt something I didn't expect: sadness. Not regret. Just sadness. Because I'd had to do this at all. Because my only child cared more about money than about me. I finished my latte. Drove home. Fed Winston. Made dinner. Watched the sunset from my back porch. And somewhere in Connecticut, in a house I'd helped pay for, my daughter was probably crying or screaming or calling her husband to figure out their next move. I went to bed that night and slept better than I had in years. The attempts to fix things started exactly 3 days after the coffee shop meeting. I was in my garden. Something I'd been neglecting for years because I was always at Rebecca's house doing things for them, when I heard a car door slam. I looked up to see Lily running across my lawn, blonde curls bouncing, with Rebecca trailing behind carrying what looked like a store-bought cake. My granddaughter threw her arms around my legs. "Grandma, I missed you." It would have been sweet if it hadn't been so clearly orchestrated. I looked at Rebecca over Lily's head. She had the decency to look somewhat ashamed. "Hi, Mom," she said, voice artificially bright. "We were in the neighborhood and thought we'd surprise you. Lily made you a card." Lily hadn't made me a card in 2 years. I knew this routine. This was the charm offensive. Step 1, deploy the child. Step 2, act like nothing's wrong. Step 3, slowly work back into my good graces and my wallet. I should have sent them away. I knew it even then. But Lily was 7 and this wasn't her fault. None of it was her fault. "Come in," I said. "I'll make tea." We sat in my kitchen. The same kitchen where I'd called Greg 3 weeks ago and started this whole thing. Rebecca cut the cake. Lily chattered about school, her voice filling the space with noise that should have felt warm but instead felt like pressure. Rebecca kept glancing at me, waiting for an opening. It came when Lily went to the bathroom. "Mom," Rebecca said quickly, leaning forward. "I'm sorry. About everything. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, and you're right. I haven't been fair to you. I haven't been appreciative." I stirred my tea and said nothing. "I want to do better," she continued. "Todd and I have been talking, and we want to make things right. We want you to be more involved in Lily's life. You're important to us." "Am I?" The question came out quieter than I intended. "Of course you are. You're my mother. And yet it took a letter from my attorney for you to realize you haven't called me in 3 months except to ask for favors." Rebecca flinched. "I know. I'm sorry. I've been overwhelmed with work and Lily's activities and the house. I let things slide. But I'm here now. I want to fix this." Lily came back then, saving Rebecca from whatever I might have said next. My granddaughter climbed into my lap, something she hadn't done in over a year, and showed me the card she'd supposedly made. It was sweet. Generic. Probably supervised by Rebecca. They stayed for an hour. Rebecca was careful, attentive, asking about my life, my plans, my garden. All the things she'd stopped asking about years ago. When they left, she hugged me at the door. "I love you, Mom. I'm going to do better. I promise." I watched them drive away and felt hollow. Because it was all performance. All of it. Rebecca didn't want to repair our relationship. She wanted to repair her bank account. The visits continued. Twice that week. 3 times the next. Rebecca started texting daily. Cheerful messages about nothing, pictures of Lily, invitations to dinner. Todd even called once to apologize for the sensitive comment, though it sounded like he was reading from a script. Patricia warned me. "They're playing you, Ellie. Don't fall for it." But part of me wanted to fall for it. Part of me wanted to believe that my daughter had finally seen the light, that we could rebuild something real. That's the thing about being a mother. You never stop hoping your child will choose you. 2 weeks into the charm offensive, Rebecca invited me to Lily's school play. A Tuesday evening performance of some musical about woodland creatures. She picked me up herself, chattering the whole drive about how excited Lily was that I was coming. We sat in the 3rd row. Lily was a rabbit. She had 4 lines and forgot 3 of them, but she was adorable and earnest, and I found myself getting genuinely emotional. After the play, we went backstage to find her. She jumped into my arms. "Did you see me, Grandma? Did you see?" "You were wonderful," I told her. And I meant it. On the drive home, Rebecca said, "Thank you for coming, Mom. It meant a lot to Lily. To me too." "I was happy to be there," I said. And I was. That's what made it all so confusing. The next day, Rebecca called. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something." Here it comes, I thought. The real reason for all this. We met for lunch at a bistro downtown. Rebecca ordered a salad she barely touched. She was nervous, fidgeting with her napkin. "I've been thinking," she started, "about the trust you set up for Lily's education." My stomach tightened. Yes. It's generous. Really generous. But Todd and I have been talking, and we think it might make more sense to put that money into a different kind of investment. Something that could grow more, benefit Lily in more ways. Like maybe we could. "No." Rebecca stopped mid-sentence. Mom, you haven't even heard. No, I repeated. That money is for Lily's education. That's what the trust specifies. That's what it will be used for. End of discussion. Her face hardened. Just slightly. Just enough for me to see the mask crack. I'm just trying to be practical. We know more about managing money than I do. I finished. Is that what you were going to say? I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. I set down my fork. Let me be clear, Rebecca. The trust is managed by Greg's firm. Neither you nor Todd can touch it. It will pay for Lily's education, tuition, books, room and board if she goes to college. That's it. That's all it will ever be used for. But what if she doesn't go to college? What if she wants to start a business, or? Then she'll have to do what your father and I did. Work for it. Save for it. Build it. Rebecca's jaw clenched. So you're just going to control everything from beyond the grave? Decide what Lily can and can't do with her own money? It's not her money. It's mine. I'm choosing to use it for her education. That's a gift. If you can't see that, if all you see is money you can't control, then I've made exactly the right decision. She stood up. I can't believe you're doing this. After everything. After everything? I stood too. Rebecca, listen to yourself. You've been pretending to care about me for 2 weeks because you want access to money. That's not love. That's not family. That's manipulation. I do care about you. Then prove it. Stop trying to change my will. Stop sending Lily over here like a trained seal. Stop pretending this is about anything other than money. If you want a relationship with me, a real one, then we'll build it. But it starts with you actually giving a damn about me as a person, not an inheritance. I left her standing there. Walked out of the bistro, got in my car, and drove home with tears streaming down my face. Because even though I meant every word, even though I knew I was right, it still hurt. God, it hurt. That night, the texts started. First from Rebecca, * you're being unreasonable. We can't even have a conversation. *. Then from Todd, * Eleanor, you're tearing this family apart. Is that what you want? *. I turned my phone off. The next week, they stopped pretending. No more visits. No more calls. Just silence. Cold, pointed silence. I'd expected it. But expecting pain doesn't make it hurt less. Patricia came over with wine and sympathy. You did the right thing, she assured me. Then why does it feel like I've lost everything? I asked. She didn't have an answer. There isn't always an answer for that kind of loss. But slowly, something shifted. Without the constant emotional drain of managing Rebecca's expectations and Todd's condescension, without the stress of wondering when the next request would come or the next insult would land, I started to breathe easier. I finished planting my garden. I joined a book club. I volunteered more at the women's shelter, where my time and money actually made a visible difference in people's lives. I was learning to build a life that was mine. Not just as someone's mother or grandmother or widow. As Eleanor. Just Eleanor. And somewhere in Connecticut, my daughter was learning that some bridges, once burned, stay burned. 3 months after I'd walked out of that bistro, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was a Saturday morning. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Hartwell? A woman's voice, professional but warm. Yes. This is Caroline Fisher. I'm the principal at Oakwood Elementary. I have Lily Morgan in my office, and she's asking for you. We've tried to reach her parents, but neither is answering. My heart jumped. Is she hurt? No. She's fine physically. But she's very upset. She says she needs her grandma. Would you be able to come? I was in my car in 3 minutes. When I got to the school, Caroline led me to her office. Lily was curled up in a chair, tear-streaked and small. When she saw me, she launched herself into my arms. Grandma, she sobbed. I want to go home with you. Please. I looked at Caroline over Lily's head. She gestured for me to sit and gently extracted Lily from my arms long enough to get the story. Apparently, there'd been an incident at drop-off. Rebecca and Todd had been fighting in the car, loudly enough that other parents noticed. When Lily got out, she'd been crying, and Rebecca had snapped at her to toughen up and stop being so dramatic. Lily had run into school and refused to go to class, saying she wanted to call me. The teacher had brought her to the office. "We still haven't reached her parents," Caroline said quietly. "Do you have any idea where they might be?" I didn't. I hadn't spoken to Rebecca in 3 months. But I gave Caroline their numbers again and told her I'd stay with Lily as long as needed. We sat there for an hour. Lily clung to me, gradually calming down. She told me things I wish I didn't know, how Rebecca and Todd fought a lot now. How Todd said they were broke, that it was Grandma's fault. How Rebecca cried in her bathroom. How nobody smiled anymore. My chest ached. Because this was what I'd been afraid of. Not that Rebecca would suffer, she'd made her choices, but that Lily would get caught in the crossfire. Rebecca finally called back. She sounded frantic. "Mom? They said you picked up Lily." "I'm at the school. Caroline Fisher called me because Lily was upset and you weren't answering." Silence. "Then, is she okay?" "She's fine. But we need to talk." "I'm on my way." She arrived 20 minutes later, looking haggard. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair pulled back messily. This wasn't the polished version of Rebecca who tried to charm me back into submission. This was someone who was barely holding it together. We left Lily with Caroline and went into the hallway. "What's going on, Rebecca?" I asked. She laughed bitterly. "What's going on? We're broke, Mom. Todd's business is failing. We're 3 months behind on the mortgage. My car lease is up, and we can't afford a new one. And my mother has decided to give away all her money to strangers while we lose everything." "I offered you something fair," I said. "The house. Personal items. You rejected that because it wasn't enough. You wanted everything." "We needed everything. Don't you understand? Dad worked his whole life so you'd be comfortable. So we'd be comfortable. And you're throwing it away on charities and scholarships." "Your father worked his whole life so I would be secure," I interrupted. "Not you. Me. He made sure I'd be taken care of because he loved me. He never promised you anything. Neither did I. You assumed." Rebecca's face crumpled. For the first time in years, I saw actual vulnerability there. Not manipulation. Real pain. "I didn't know it would be this hard," she whispered. "Todd promised his business would take off. He said we just needed a little help to get started. I thought you'd always be there to help." And there it was. The core of everything. Rebecca hadn't just assumed she'd inherit money. She'd built her entire financial life around that assumption. She'd spent money she didn't have on a lifestyle she couldn't afford because she believed Grandma's money would always catch her. "Sweetheart," I said, more gently than I felt, "I couldn't enable that forever. I can't keep rescuing you from bad decisions. That's not helping you. It's hurting you. So what am I supposed to do?" Her voice broke. "How do I fix this?" "The same way everyone else does. You make hard choices. You downsize. You get real jobs instead of relying on Todd's pipe dreams. You build something sustainable instead of waiting for someone to save you." She looked at me like I'd suggested she fly to the moon. "You really expect me to just figure it out?" "I do. Because you're smart and capable, and you've forgotten that because it was easier to be helpless." We stood there in that school hallway, years of resentment and disappointment and love all tangled up between us. Finally, Rebecca said, "Are you ever going to forgive me?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "Are you ever going to see me as more than a bank account?" She didn't answer. Maybe she couldn't. I went back and got Lily. Told Rebecca I'd take her for the weekend, give them time to sort things out. Rebecca nodded, hugged her daughter briefly, and left. That weekend, Lily and I baked cookies, watched movies, worked in the garden. She talked a little about what was happening at home, how scary it was when her parents fought, how she worried about money even though she didn't really understand it. "Am I why everyone's mad at you?" she asked on Sunday, while we were pulling weeds. "No, baby. This has nothing to do with you." "But Mom said you changed your will. That means who gets your money when you die, right?" I shouldn't have been surprised, she understood. Kids pick up on everything. "Yes," I said carefully. "I made some changes to make sure my money goes to causes I care about." "Like what?" "Like helping women who need a safe place to stay. Like helping animals. Like helping kids go to college." Lily thought about this. "Then, that sounds nice." "I think so too." "Grandma? Am I still getting college money?" "You are. There's a special account just for that. Nobody can touch it but you, and only for school." She nodded seriously. "Good. I want to be a veterinarian." She told me this like it was the most important information in the world. And maybe it was. On Sunday evening, I took her home. Todd answered the door. He looked worse than Rebecca, unshaven, rumpled, defeated. "Thanks for taking her," he muttered. "Anytime." He hesitated. Then, "Eleanor, Look, I'm sorry. For how I've treated you. You didn't deserve it." I studied him. He looked like he meant it. Or maybe he'd just been beaten down enough to see reality. "Thank you," I said. "That matters." Rebecca came to the door, took Lily inside. Turned back to me. "Mom? Do you think? Could we maybe have coffee sometime? Just us. No agenda." "I'd like that," I said. And I meant it. Not because I'd forgiven everything. Not because I was ready to hand over my checkbook and pretend the last year hadn't happened. But because she was still my daughter. And maybe, just maybe, we could build something real from the ashes of what we'd burned down. That coffee date happened 2 weeks later. We sat in the same shop where I'd told her the trust was untouchable, but this time felt different. Rebecca didn't come with demands or strategies. She came with exhaustion and honesty. "We're selling the house," she said without preamble. "Moving into a rental. Something we can actually afford." I nodded. "That's smart." "Todd's shutting down the business. He's taking a job with an engineering firm. Salary, benefits, actual stability. I'm going back to teaching full-time instead of the part-time consulting I've been doing." "Rebecca, that's good. That's really good." She laughed without humor. "It's humiliating is what it is. Do you know how it feels to be 42 years old and starting over? To admit that we failed." "It's not failure," I said. "It's course correction. And it takes courage." She looked at me then, really looked at me. "When did you get so strong?" The question caught me off guard. "I've always been strong. You just never noticed because I was too busy making everything easy for you." She flinched but didn't argue. "I called a therapist," she said quietly. "For me and for Lily. Maybe family therapy too, if Todd agrees. I don't want her growing up in the chaos I've created." Something in my chest loosened. This was real. This was my daughter actually trying. "I'm proud of you," I said. Her eyes filled with tears. "Even after everything?" "Especially after everything. Because you're finally taking responsibility. That's what I've been waiting for." We talked for 2 hours. Really talked. Not about money or wills or inheritances. About her marriage, her fears, her realization that she'd been coasting on entitlement for years. About how angry she'd been at my father for dying and leaving us, how that anger had somehow transferred to me. About how she'd conflated my love with my ability to solve her problems. If you've ever had a conversation that felt like surgery, painful but necessary, cutting away infected tissue to save what's healthy underneath, you know what that afternoon was like. Before we left, she asked, "Are you going to change your will back?" I'd been expecting this. "No." She nodded slowly. "I understand. I don't like it, but I understand. The trust for Lily stays regardless. And you're still inheriting the house and personal items. That's not nothing, Rebecca." "I know. I spent so long counting on more. Building my life around more. It's hard to let that go. Then let it be hard, I said gently. But let it go anyway. Over the next 6 months, I watched my daughter transform. Not overnight. Not perfectly. But steadily. She and Todd moved into a modest 3-bedroom rental near Lily's school. Rebecca started teaching again, 5th grade English, and I could hear the pride in her voice when she talked about her students. Todd's engineering job was stable, boring, and exactly what they needed. They sold Rebecca's BMW and bought a used Honda. They stopped eating out and started cooking at home. And slowly, cautiously, we rebuilt our relationship. Not the old one, where I was the eternal problem solver and she was the eternal child. Something new. Something more equal. She still slipped sometimes. There were moments when she'd mention a financial stress and I'd see the expectation flash across her face, the old habit of waiting for me to offer a solution. But she'd catch herself now. "We'll figure it out," she'd say instead. And they would. I met them for dinner once a month. I took Lily for a weekend every few weeks, but not as free childcare, as grandma time that we both genuinely enjoyed. I taught her about Richard, about the man her grandfather had been. I showed her photo albums and told her stories. I wanted her to understand where she came from, even if where she was going would be different. One Saturday in October, almost a year after I'd revised my will, Rebecca and I were having coffee at my house while Lily played in the yard with Winston. Rebecca was watching her daughter through the window, a soft smile on her face. "She's doing better," she said. "The therapy is helping. She talks about her feelings now instead of throwing things." That's wonderful. I think I was teaching her that emotions were inconvenient. That showing feelings was weakness. God, Mom, I was turning her into a smaller version of my worst self. "But you stopped," I pointed out. "That's what matters." Rebecca turned to look at me. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "When you changed your will, did you ever think we might actually get better? That it might work?" I considered this. "Honestly? No. I thought I was choosing myself over you because I had to. I didn't expect you to choose growth." "What would you have done if we hadn't? If we just stayed angry and kept pushing?" "I would have lived my life anyway," I said. "I would have been sad about it. But I wouldn't have regretted standing up for myself." She nodded slowly. "I'm glad I didn't make you choose that." "Me too." Lily came running in then, breathless and pink-cheeked, demanding hot chocolate. We made it together in my kitchen, 3 generations, working around each other comfortably. And I thought about how different this scene would be if I hadn't made that phone call to Greg. If I'd just swallowed the juice incident and everything that came before it. If I'd kept being small to make everyone else comfortable. We would probably still be together, in the technical sense. Rebecca would still visit, still call. But it would be hollow. Transactional. I'd be tolerated, not treasured. And I'd be teaching Lily that women should accept disrespect as the price of love. This, the real laughter, the honest conversation, the genuine effort. This only existed because I'd been willing to lose it all. That evening, after they left, I sat on my back porch with a glass of wine and called Patricia. "How'd it go?" she asked. "Good. Really good, actually." "I'm proud of you, Ellie. What you did, standing up for yourself like that. Most people never find that courage." "You know what's funny?" I said. "I didn't feel courageous. I just felt done." That's usually when courage shows up. When you're too exhausted to keep pretending. I thought about that after we hung up. About courage and exhaustion and the fine line between giving up and starting over. The holidays that year were different. Smaller. Rebecca, Todd, Lily, and me having dinner at my house. No expensive gifts. We'd agreed to keep it simple. But there was laughter. Real laughter. And when Lily made me a card, actually made it this time, with her own wobbly handwriting and glitter glue, I cried. "I love you, Grandma," she'd written. "Thank you for teaching me that money isn't the same as love." Rebecca saw me reading it and got teary too. Her therapist helped her write that, she admitted. But she meant every word. It's perfect, I said. That night, after they left, I pulled out my will, the one Greg had drawn up a year ago. I read through it slowly, carefully. The shelter. The animal rescue. The scholarship fund. Lily's education trust. The house for Rebecca. I didn't change anything. Because it wasn't about punishment. It never had been. It was about alignment. My money would go to causes that reflected my values, helping others, protecting the vulnerable, investing in education. Rebecca would get the house, the physical manifestation of the life Richard and I built. That felt right. That felt complete. And if she never got the financial windfall she'd once expected, well, maybe that was its own kind of gift. Maybe learning to build her own life, to find her own strength, was worth more than any inheritance I could leave her. The Monday after Thanksgiving, I got a call from the women's shelter. The director, Angela, asked if I'd come in for a meeting. When I arrived, she led me to a conference room where 3 women were waiting. Former residents who'd gotten back on their feet and wanted to thank me for my donations. One of them, Sarah, was maybe 30. She'd left her husband with 2 kids and nothing else. The shelter had housed them, fed them, helped her find a job and an apartment. She was working now as a dental hygienist, raising her kids in safety. "Mrs. Hartwell," she said, taking my hand. "I heard you've set up a major donation in your estate plan. I wanted you to know what that means. You're literally saving lives." I'd been thinking of my donations as symbolic, a way to honor Richard's memory and my own values. But sitting there, listening to Sarah and the others talk about second chances and survival and hope, I realized it was more than that. This was legacy. Real legacy. Not just passing money to the next generation, but using resources to create lasting change. When I got home that afternoon, I called Greg. "Eleanor," he said warmly, "what can I do for you?" "I want to add something to my will. A message. Can we do that?" "Of course. What kind of message?" I thought about Rebecca, about Lily, about all the years of silence and hurt and eventually healing. About the women at the shelter and the scholarships that would bear Richard's name. About Winston purring in my lap and Patricia's friendship and the garden I'd finally finished planting. "I want to leave a letter," I said. "To be read when I'm gone. For Rebecca and Lily. Explaining everything." "That's a wonderful idea. What do you want to say?" I closed my eyes and felt the words come, that love isn't measured in dollars. That self-respect isn't selfish. That sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the opportunity to stand on their own. That I hope they understand why I made the choices I made. And that I forgive them, really truly forgive them, because forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing peace. Greg was quiet for a moment. Then, "I'll draft something beautiful. We can review it together next week." "Thank you, Greg." "Eleanor? For what it's worth, I think Richard would be very proud of you." After I hung up, I sat in the quiet of my living room and let myself feel everything. The grief of what I'd lost. The joy of what I'd found. The complexity of loving someone even when they've hurt you. The strength it takes to say no. The grace it takes to say yes again. I thought about that Tuesday afternoon in April when cranberry juice soaked through my silk blouse and something died inside me. How that death had actually been a birth, the beginning of choosing myself. If someone had told me then that a year later I'd have less family drama, more peace, a stronger relationship with my daughter, and a profound sense of purpose, I wouldn't have believed them. Pain like that feels permanent. But it isn't. Nothing is. I picked up my phone and texted Rebecca, "Thank you for trying. It means everything." She responded immediately, "Thank you for not giving up on me. Even when you should have." I smiled and set down the phone. The story wasn't over. It would keep unfolding. New challenges, new growth, new moments of joy and frustration and love. But the central truth was established now. I mattered. My needs mattered. My dignity mattered. And that truth had cost me everything and nothing at the same time. It's been 3 years now since I changed my will. 3 years since I stood up for myself and risked losing everything. Rebecca is thriving. She got promoted to assistant principal. Todd's still working his stable engineering job, and they've saved enough for a down payment on a modest house. Lily is 10 now, already talking about college, already understanding that education is a privilege and a tool. She treats me with respect not because she has to, but because she genuinely cares. We're not perfect. We still have hard conversations. Rebecca still sometimes reverts to old patterns, expecting me to solve problems that are hers to handle. But she catches herself now. And I'm better at setting boundaries without feeling guilty. I volunteer at the shelter twice a week. I've made friends there. Other women who understand what it means to rebuild from nothing. The Scholarship Fund is awarding its second round of grants this year. Richard's name is helping kids get educated, just like he would have wanted. My garden is thriving. Winston is getting old but still follows me around like a shadow. Patricia and I take weekend trips now, little adventures we'd always talked about but never prioritized. I'm not just existing anymore. I'm living. And sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and I'm alone with my thoughts, I think about that woman standing in Rebecca's kitchen with juice dripping down her blouse. How small she felt. How invisible. I wish I could go back and tell her, you won't feel this way forever. It gets better. You get stronger. And the cost of standing up for yourself is high, but the cost of not doing it is higher. But I can't go back. None of us can. We can only move forward. So if you're watching this from somewhere in the world, feeling small in your own life, invisible in your own family, taken for granted by the people who should treasure you, I want you to know something: you deserve better. You deserve respect. You deserve to be seen as a whole person, not just as what you can provide. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for them, is to stop enabling the behavior that's hurting everyone. It won't be easy. They'll be angry. They'll call you selfish. They'll make you doubt yourself. But on the other side of that anger is possibility. The possibility of real relationships built on mutual respect instead of obligation. The possibility of discovering who you are when you're not constantly shrinking to fit someone else's expectations. Is it worth it? God, yes. 1,000 times yes. I spent 6 years being small. I'm spending the rest of my life being whole. And to everyone who's watched this story unfold, thank you. Thank you for listening, for understanding, for maybe seeing yourself in my experience. If this resonated with you, check the description box below for more stories like mine. Stories about finding strength, setting boundaries, and reclaiming your life. Wherever you are tonight, whatever you're facing, remember, you matter. Your dignity matters. Your peace matters. Don't wait 6 years to realize it.